Hey everyone, welcome back to our Histo PH family comes alive today. Imagine outsmarting an empire so powerful it ruled half the world without ever firing a single shot. This is the story of the ancient Filipino money system before banks, a secret economic network that proved our ancestors didn't just survive colonial powers, they outwitted them long before those empires ever set foot on our shores. Long before banks, paper bills, or even the word money, the ancient Filipinos had already built a functioning and sophisticated economy. Their system was based not on promises or paper, but on something real, tangible, and eternal: gold. In an age when most of the world still bartered livestock and goods, the ancestors of the islands we now call the Philippines were using gold as a standardized medium of exchange. They traded with it, wore it, saved it, and measured wealth not by land or possessions, but by the brilliance of this precious metal that came from the heart of their homeland. Archaeologists have unearthed tiny golden pieces called piloncitos, small, bead-like forms often weighing less than a gram. These minuscule artifacts, discovered across Luzon and Mindanao, are considered the earliest known coins in the Philippines and possibly in all of Southeast Asia. They date back as far as the 9th century, long before the arrival of any colonizer, and their perfect shapes reveal an astonishing level of craftsmanship. Each piloncito was made of nearly pure gold, carefully measured and minted to match others of similar size and weight. This standardization proves that the ancient Filipinos already understood the concept of currency, a unit of value accepted by the community for trade. The piloncitos were often traded hand to hand, exchanged for rice, cloth, livestock, pottery, and goods imported from neighboring kingdoms. To the untrained eye, they might look like simple beads, but to ancient traders, they represented trust, labor, and prosperity. Their round, smooth forms glowed like captured sunlight, tokens of a civilization quietly thriving in the heart of the archipelago. These coins reveal not only economic sophistication, but also a deeper sense of organization. They tell us that ancient Filipino communities were not isolated villages. They were connected through complex trade routes and systems of mutual trust. Beyond the tiny piloncitos, archaeologists also found something much larger and even more symbolic: the barter rings. These were massive circular pieces of gold, sometimes as wide as a man's palm, too large to wear as jewelry. They were used for bigger transactions, property exchanges, dowries, or trade between rulers and foreign merchants. To the ancient Filipinos, these rings were both money and sacred art. Their circular form symbolized continuity and eternity, reflecting the belief that gold was not just wealth, but a divine gift from the earth. Barter rings were often stored with great reverence, handed down through generations, and sometimes buried with their owners as a sign of eternal prosperity. If this part of our history surprised you, hit that like button, because this is the kind of wisdom our ancestors left us that schools never taught. Drop a comment with what you think was the smartest part of this ancient system, and let's see how far ahead our ancestors really were. And of course, subscribe to join the Histo PH family, where real Filipino history finally comes alive. Gold in pre-colonial Philippine society was more than currency. It was a language of power and faith. It marked status, purity, and even moral worth. Those who possessed it were not merely rich, they were considered blessed. Gold adorned the body in every possible way: necklaces, bracelets, anklets, belts, earrings, and even teeth. In the Visayas and Mindanao, warriors and nobles wore gold-inlaid teeth as a sign of bravery and honor. When they smiled, their mouths literally shone with wealth. This practice impressed and sometimes unsettled early foreign traders who had never seen such intricate artistry from islanders they had assumed to be primitive. But these were not primitive people. They were engineers, metallurgists, and economists. The technology behind their gold work is proof of this brilliance. Ancient Filipino smiths, known as Panday Ginto, mastered techniques of alloying, hammering, casting, and polishing. Without modern tools, they achieved purity and precision rivaling even the artisans of India and China. They understood how to control fire and metal, how to melt, mold, and cool gold at precise temperatures. The pilonchitos and barter rings were not accidental creations. They were deliberate, scientific, and consistent. That consistency is what allowed them to function as money. When you held a pilonchito, you knew what it was worth. You trusted it. This trust extended across the seas. Long before the Spaniards arrived, the islands were part of a vast trade network that linked them with the empires of Srivijaya, Majapahit, Champa, and the Chinese dynasties. Ancient Chinese records mention a place called Mai, likely Mindoro, which traded gold, pearls, and tortoise shells with merchants from the mainland. Butuan in Mindanao became legendary for its shipbuilding and gold trade. Archaeologists discovered the Balangay boats there, enormous wooden vessels built centuries before European colonization. Butuan's people were not only sailors, they were traders of gold, exporting it across the seas in exchange for silk, porcelain, and spices. When Chinese traders wrote about these islands, they did not describe them as backward or poor. They spoke of abundance, of people who bathed in gold and wore it daily. The Spanish chroniclers later confirmed the same. Antonio Pigafetta, who traveled with Magellan, marveled at the amount of gold jewelry worn by the people of Cebu and Butuan. He described it as so pure and abundant, it blinded the eyes. These were not exaggerations. In every region, from Luzon to Mindanao, gold was mined, smelted, shaped, and exchanged as part of everyday life. It was the bloodstream of society. The existence of pilonchitos and barter rings also reveals a sophisticated sense of measurement and value. Ancient Filipinos used balance scales to weigh gold and other precious goods. Values were determined by weight, not by arbitrary decree. Gold dust and nuggets were stored in bamboo containers or small pouches, and transactions were made by mutual agreement based on honesty and reputation. In this system, a man's word was as valuable as his gold. It was an economy built not on exploitation, but on trust. Each community had its own datu or local leader who acted as both ruler and guarantor of fairness in trade. If disputes arose, they were settled by councils, and the integrity of gold was never questioned lightly. If you're still watching, you're officially part of the 5% who actually care about learning, not just looking at trends, but understanding the truth they never taught us. The Spanish colonizers, upon arrival, found this both impressive and inconvenient. Their own coins and silver were of little interest to the natives, who preferred their pure local gold. Many Filipinos even melted Spanish coins to create their own jewelry or recast them into more beautiful shapes. The colonizers realized quickly that they had not discovered a primitive society, but one that already had its own working economy, one that did not need them. To establish control, they had to first destroy that system. They banned the use of native gold as currency, seized what they could, and melted it down to send to the Spanish crown. Entire collections of piloncitos and barter rings disappeared into colonial vaults, their cultural meaning erased and rewritten as mere treasure. Over the centuries, countless artifacts were lost, melted, stolen, or buried under time. Yet fragments remain. Museums in Manila, Butuan, and even foreign cities still hold these tiny golden coins, silent witnesses to a civilization that once understood the true meaning of value. Each piece, no matter how small, represents a network of trade, a story of trust, and a symbol of genius that predates colonization by hundreds of years. The story of the piloncitos and barter rings challenges the common belief that the Philippines had no organized economy before Spain. It shows that our ancestors were part of the global trading world, not as subjects, but as equals, innovators who shaped their own systems of commerce. They created wealth from the land, managed it wisely, and wove it into their spiritual and social lives. Gold connected them to one another and to the divine. It is easy to forget this legacy when history books begin our story in 1521. But long before that date, long before European ships appeared on our shores, Filipinos had already built a world of sophistication and meaning. They didn't need foreign banks to teach them economy. They had their own. They didn't need coins stamped with the king's face to know value. Their gold already spoke for itself. Their system was rooted in community, craftsmanship, and credibility, a model of sustainability that modern economies could still learn from. Gold was our first technology, our first symbol of faith and identity. It shaped our tools, our art, and our culture. It was the bridge that connected distant islands and diverse tribes into a single archipelago of exchange. Even today, when we see gold gleam, something in us remembers. It is not just a precious metal, it is a memory of who we were. A people who understood wealth not as greed, but as balance and beauty. The piloncitos remind us that the Filipino mind has always been inventive. The barter rings remind us that our ancestors valued unity and fairness as much as prosperity. Together, they tell a story far older than the colony, older than the galleons, older than any empire that claimed to discover us. They tell the story of a nation that had already discovered itself, golden, wise, and enduring. And even though centuries of colonization tried to bury that light, it still shines today in every museum display, in every recovered artifact, and in every Filipino heart that dares to remember. The gold of our ancestors was not only metal, it was spirit. It was proof that long before others called us subjects, we were already masters of our craft, our trade, and our destiny. Our ancestors' stories don't end here. Smash that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to join the Histo PH family for the next epic chapter, coming soon.